Manila. There's Cavite, there's Bataan, there's Pampanga, there's Bulacan. Pasig River is not owned by Pasig. It goes all the way from the mouth of Manila up to the mouth of Laguna de Balais. And in fact, Laguna is not owned by the province of Laguna, which shares it with some towns of Rizal and towns in Metro Manila. In fact, it is Laguna de Balais, which is a town in Laguna. And the Indian Ocean is not owned by India. In fact, even the Philippine Sea, which is a vast sea, is not owned by the Philippines. It goes all the way to Guam. The famous big battle of aircraft carriers in the Second World War is called the Battle of the Philippine Sea, where the United States demolished the Japanese fleet. But that's not really in the Philippines. It's closer to the Marianas than the Philippines. But that's still called the Philippine Sea. Arabian Sea is not owned by Arabia. Persian Gulf is not owned by Persia. So the geographers, I think, know better. First, I would like to thank Brother Bishop Dan Balais for inviting me. Maraming salamat po. And I'd like to recognize also Pastor Ed de Guzman, Nona Londonio, Tonette Balais, Madam Tonette Balais, Pastora Joy Ponco, Doctora Ludi Grace Ramirez, May de la Cruz, Dr. Wilson Pineda, the foremost skin expert of the country, and my good friend Mon Orosa, and the other luminaries here, in particular the owner of the place, Brother Wyden King. Maraming salamat po. I remember meeting you maybe about 3-4 years ago when Bishop Baku was here. Now I'd like to talk about the Panatag Shoal standoff. It's not really here in the program. It's supposed to be a Spratly situation there. I'd like to talk about the Panatag Shoal, or the Scarborough Shoal, or the it's not Spratly because Spratly is down south. First, I'd like to show you how the Panatag Shoal looks like from a few thousand meters away. Rocks. But you might have the impression that this is a small piece of real estate. But actually, it is not. The physical description is as follows. The shoal forms a triangle-shaped chain of reefs and islands, but mostly rocks, 55 kilometers or 34 miles around, with an area of 150 square kilometers. You can imagine, you can visualize how long 55 kilometers is. In fact, a fast-moving ship will take about 2 hours to go around the shoal. And 150 square kilometers is 3 times the size of Parañaque City. You're familiar with Parañaque City, you can visualize how big 150 square kilometers is. But if it's still difficult for you, it is almost as big as Quezon City. Quezon City is about 160 square kilometers. The Panatag Shoal is 150 square kilometers. And it has a lagoon, a body of water inside, with an area of 130 square kilometers, still quite big, and a depth of about 15 meters or 49 feet. You know, a good frigate has a depth of much less than a draft of about a little over 40, so a frigate can go inside with a lot of allowance. So if you are talking of a body of water almost the size of Quezon City, you can imagine how many naval warships can be accommodated inside. In the Second World War, there was the Ulithi Atoll, which was the R&R area of the US Navy towards the end of the Second World War. It was about 500 square kilometers big. And at that time, it could accommodate practically the entire US fleet in the Pacific. And this one is about 1/3 the size of the Ulithi Reef. So you can imagine how big this is. That was for the Second World War. And this one is for a regional area. The shoal is a protrusion from a 3,500 meter deep abyssal plain. Several of the islands, including South Rock, are 1/2 meters to 3 meters high, and many of the reefs are just below water at high tide. Near the mouth of the lagoon, there's a mouth. And of course, engineers know that if the mouth is not big enough, it can be made bigger to accommodate more vessels. Near the mouth of the lagoon are the ruins of an iron tower, 8.3 meters high. It is about 123 miles west of Subic Bay. The nearest landmass is Palawig, Zambales on Luzon Island in the Philippines, 137 miles away. This is the view of the Panatag Shoal from above. So you can see, I think engineers here can already visualize what can be constructed. You know, I forgot to show a picture of how the Mischief Reef, remember Mischief Reef? We lost that in the 90s, also after the encroachment of the Chinese. That is only a reef, a very small reef, but they were able to convert that. They did some engineering work there, and they were able to convert it into a big mass, so that they constructed buildings there that is almost as big as the municipios that we see in big towns. Ganun kalaki na ipalagay nila ron. History, background. We found this map. This is a map made by a certain Vincenzo Coronelli of Venice, 1690. And you can see, ito yung meron ng parang demarcation line around the Philippines, no? Ito. Andito yung demarcation line niya. And as early as that, what this suggests is that that demarcation line there establishes the territorial extension of the Philippines. Walang reference to China here. Hindi pinag-uusapan ng China. Otherwise, you can see you'd be able to see the word Chin, siguro, Chine. Nakalagay ito, Indi de la, meaning the Indies, kasi alam niyo naman, history. Indies ang tawag sa atin noong panahon na yan, kaya tinawag tayong Indio, noong panahon ng mga Kastila. Ito ang linya, and the Scarborough Shoal is right here. Tapos nakikita mga dots of island, yan ang Spratlys ngayon. Doon pa lang, may mapa na. Nakikita na lang Spratlys ang panahon yun. Ito yung what we now call Vietnam, this is Borneo, and Celebes, etc., etc. No mention of the China Sea or Mare de China, kung meron mang ganyan, no? Dapat meron dyan. That was 1690. Another map, this time a map drawn by Father Pedro Murillo Velarde, a Jesuit, hydrographic and cartographic expert de las Islas Filipinas, published in 1734. And as early as that, makikita na yung, ito na yung Scarborough Shoal. Meron ng drawing ng Scarborough Shoal. And this is supposed to be the map that shows the coverage of the Philippine territory as early as 1734. Meron tayong close-up dyan, makikita nyo na. And this is a close-up. Ang tawag nung una, Panakot ito. This Panakot, now Panatag o Baho de Masinloc. So now you can already visualize how big this is compared to the present location of Metro Manila. Kaya meron kasi nagsasabi parati, napakalit na lugar pinag-aawayan natin. It's not small. It's big, and it can be converted with by a big economy, by a powerful and economically powerful country into what Navy people call an unsinkable aircraft carrier. Maraming pwedeng gawin dito that can be a big threat to the security of the country and security of the entire region. Kasi kung titignan nyo, ibalik natin yung mapa, no? Even if this, well, mamaya pakikita ko. Okay. Now, ito ang the contentious area. Ito ang Spratlys, ito ang Scarborough Shoal, Ito ang ating exclusive economic zone, the blue line. 200 nautical miles from the coastline of the Philippines. And in 1947, China, at that time under the Kuomintang, declared unilaterally that they own the sea covered by what they call the 9 dash lines. No basis whatsoever, they said, historically, but without any coordinates. You know, I think real estate people know that if you claim a certain piece of property, you must be able to also identify and define the coordinates. But in this particular case, until now, the Chinese cannot define the coordinates. When Mao Zedong took over China, they also adopted this claim. That's why there are 2 countries or 2 places that are claiming this 9 dash line. Mainland China and Taiwan. Because pag lipat nila sa Taiwan, kasama pa rin nila yung claim nito. So makikita nyo rito, halos kalahati ng Spratlys are inside our exclusive economic zone. And Scarborough Shoal is way within our exclusive economic zone. Ang Mischief Reef is somewhere here. So now it's about 160 nautical miles. Ngayon, hawak na ng China ang Mischief Reef. Pag nakuha nila ito, they will have 2 places. And this will control the so-called Palawan Passage. Dito dumadaan yung mga 200 big commercial ships that are the lifeline of the economy of mainland China, of Taiwan, of Korea, and of Japan. That's why all these countries, including the Philippines, are so concerned about the security, the so-called freedom of navigation in this part of the world. So, ito naman yung, ang Vietnam is also a claimant. Ito, kanila dati ito, this was occupied forcibly by the mainland Chinese, yung Paracels. Ang Indonesia is not a claimant, but ang problema, itong 9 dash line sila also intrudes into the Natuna area of Indonesia. That's why they're also interested in what's going to happen here. Noong 2007, I was fortunate to be assigned as the chairman of the technical working group that worked on the Philippine Archipelagic Baselines Law. And initially, when we passed it at the House level, we adopted a certain option. No? We considered several options in defining our archipelagic baselines. Yung archipelagic baselines, yan yung mga baselines that would define our territorial sea around the country. Ang unang option tingnan namin with respect to how to treat the Scarborough Shoal and the islands that we're claiming in the Spratlys. Option number 1 was to treat the Scarborough Shoal as a baseline, as a base point, and the Spratly Islands as a regime of islands. That is a technical term under UNCLOS. So option number 1 will be like this. Pag maging base point yan, it means that if you draw a baseline, this body of water will become part of our territorial sea. Atin yan. Pag regime of islands, you just draw a territorial sea around the islands. So ang makiklaim mo lang dito, pero itong body of water in between will not be part of our territorial sea. That's option number 1. Option number 2 was to consider both the Scarborough Shoal and the Spratlys Islands that we're claiming as regime of islands, and then just follow the traditional baselines of the country. Yan ang option number 2. Option number 3 would consider the Spratlys as base points, and therefore this body of water will become part of a territorial sea, and treat Scarborough Shoal as a regime of islands. And finally, option number 4, treat the Scarborough Shoal and our Spratly claims as base points, and therefore the body of water between the base points and mainland would be part of our territorial sea. We adopted this initially, option number 4. But then ang nangyari, the Department of Foreign Affairs asked for an emergency meeting with the Committee on Foreign Affairs headed at that time by Congressman Antonio Cuenco, and exerted a lot of pressure on us to change our proposal. And I understand that the reason for that is because of the pressure also from China. So nangyari dito, because of that strong pressure, we adopted option number 2. And option number 2, as you would recall, would treat the Scarborough Shoal or Panatag Shoal as a regime of islands, and also the islands in the Spratlys as regime of islands. Kaya hindi na ito magiging territorial sea. Hindi ito magiging territorial sea. Ang magiging territorial sea natin would be the body of water around the island. And that was the option that we adopted, and that became Republic Act 1522, the Philippine Archipelagic Baselines, no? At yan ang dahilan kung bakit naging ganun tayo, because of, ano ba itong regime of islands? This is in Article 121 of UNCLOS, the United Nations Convention on the Law of the Sea, and this is now Republic Act 9522, defining 101 base points and providing under Section 2 that the following are to be considered regime of islands: Calayan Island Group and Bajo de Masinloc, also known as Scarborough Shoal. When we enacted this, what we got was a message from the Chinese ambassador conveying to our Department of Foreign Affairs China's displeasure with the RP baseline law. Displeasure lang. There was no, as far as I know, there was no formal protesting our baseline law. So, that was in 2009, 3 years ago. So, pag hindi sila masyado nag-protest, there was no formal protest, it would indicate that in general, acceptance. Otherwise, they should have protested violently. So walang nangyari dyan. But then, all of a sudden, of course, what we now know is this standoff, this existing standoff with respect to the Panatag Shoal. I'm sure you're all very familiar with this. I'm not going to belabor the point right now. Dati, when I delivered this privileged speech last Monday, I was talking of 14 Chinese vessels in the Panatag Shoal area. 4 are government vessels. Walang naval naman, no? But these are government vessels. 1 is a surveillance ship, 3 are surveillance ships, and 1 is a Bureau of Fisheries ship of China. Kaya meron tayong dalawa ron, so merong standoff, but I understand now, the latest, they have 34 vessels here. Kasi dinagdagan yung mga fishing vessels nila. At direject rin ng China yung ating request for mediation in the sea road through ITLOS, the International Tribunal on the Law of the Sea. Ang sabi ko nga, kung talagang malakas ang claim nila, if their claim is really very strong, they should be the first one. They said that they can document this. They should be the first one to say, let's take this to court. But the show of weakness, they refused to take this to court. We're the ones insisting. There's a protest that will be starting tomorrow. This is in the Philippine-American community, starting in the US, in Canada, and hopefully in other countries with the big Filipino communities. And the one leading this is Filipino-American businesswoman, Loida Nicolas Lewis. And they're going to rally in front of Chinese embassies and consulates starting on May 11. That's going to be tomorrow. And in my privilege speech, I said that we should support this. This is what we call public diplomacy. There are 2 kinds of diplomacy: state diplomacy and public diplomacy. The state diplomacy is the diplomacy being conducted by the Department of Foreign Affairs and by the President, by the state. Public diplomacy is when I deliver a speech. I'm not a member of the Foreign Affairs group, but when I deliver a privileged speech, when I speak before you, when Bishop Balais will talk about this, that was what we call public diplomacy. Lloyd and Nicholas Lewis rallying, that's public diplomacy. If there's a rally in front of the Chinese embassy, that's public diplomacy. If we do social networking, internet, YouTube, etc., that is public diplomacy. If a columnist will write about it, that is public diplomacy. About 100 million Filipinos talking about it, this is public diplomacy. This is what I call fighting with 1,000,000 needles instead of fighting with 1,000 missiles. Needles can become very effective. We prick the conscience of people and make the world know that there's a giant trying to bully us. Of course, fighting with 1,000,000 needles is not as good a slogan as Warship versus Warship. Mas maganda ang slogan ninyo. And I congratulate you for your call to arms, a call to battle. Ngayon naman, ito rin may hackers na ito. Meron yung bakbaka ngayon. Let's see who are better, Filipino hackers or Chinese hackers. Of course, we're not encouraging this because in the end, the economy, our economies might be affected. Can you imagine if they hack our banking system, for example, or we hack their banking system? Tayo mahirapan din yan. If the economy of China is going to be hurt, masasaktan din tayo because we also export a lot of things to China. We don't want the economy to become a bad economy. Ito, isang very controversial, the 2+2 meeting, when our Secretary of Foreign Affairs, Del Rosario, Secretary of Defense, Gasmin, met with their counterpart, Secretary of State Clinton, and Secretary of Defense Panetta. Maraming nag-interpret. Ano ibig sabihin ng statement nila? Lalo na yung statement nila na hands-off, that they would remain neutral as far as the dispute is concerned. But if you study the statement of Secretary Clinton after the 2+2 meeting, the opening statement was about the reaffirmation of the Mutual Defense Treaty. And then followed by some diplomatists saying that they remain neutral, they would like this to be resolved diplomatically, that they will remain in constant communication with the Philippines. But I think, to me, the more meaningful statement is the reaffirmation of the Mutual Defense Treaty. That's why, and then the promise that they will help us. Although you in-announce ni Secretary Panetta, magpapadala ng bagong cutter. It's good that will help us, but perhaps we need something like this instead of an ordinary Coast Guard cutter, a real honest-to-goodness Navy ship, an old one, pero pwede pa rin, better than what we have, better than a cutter. Maraming ganito na available sa Amerika ngayon eh. Second hand. Sa amin na nasa Navy kami, ang tawag namin ito, bagong luma. Luma sa kanila, pero sa atin bago. Okay, pag tignan natin yung, well, ito rin, there's this General Lu Yuan, a major general who has been saber rattling, and a lot of people are wondering whether he's talking with the approval of the higher authority or he is just a maverick general. But usually that's how they do it. They will have someone who will talk informally, and they can disown it, but actually the message is made clear also that they can resort to hostile means. Kasi ang sabi nito ni General, military solution ang kailangan niya rito. And then they had a show of force in Hong Kong very recently when 2 Chinese warships docked in Hong Kong, very close to home. That's why they're saying that there's a return to gunboat diplomacy.
By 2 Chinese warships, and a hugely symbolic one for China, illustrating its growing naval might. These 2 vessels are said to be state-of-the-art additions to the Chinese Navy. They've just returned from a 5-month deployment to the Gulf of Aden, where they've been on anti-piracy duties. China's naval influence, of course, extending well into the Indian Ocean. But it's a stretch of water, the South China Sea, which is of much greater strategic interest right now as China vies for control of it with its Asian neighbours. At stake, of course, are said to be potentially huge oil reserves. So it looks set that there will be future spats, future confrontations with Asian navies, and also, of course, with the much more powerful United States Navy. China locked in a dispute with the Philippines at the moment over disputed islands in the South China Sea, but the leader of the task force here had this message for the Philippines government.
Hualien Island is and has always been Chinese territory. That is not negotiable. As for the Navy's role, we will follow whatever orders the central government gives us.
As a major port, Hong Kong is of course no stranger to Navy visits. The United States Pacific Fleet calls in here all the time. Its visits with its aircraft carriers involving far more ships and thousands more sailors. But it seems with China's growing military might, we're going to see more visits by Chinese warships here, by newer ships, and by bigger ships in the future. Robert Bride, Al Jazeera, Hong Kong.
And we are attracting a lot of attention already. You can see that in the Wall Street Journal, in CNN, in Washington Post, even the Foreign Secretary of UK gave a statement about the situation here. Now let's look at the Mutual Defense Treaty. This is a very contentious issue. Parang na-discourage yung marami, no? Because of the statement of Secretary Clinton that they're hands-off, that they would remain neutral in the territorial dispute. But I would like to say that to me, my reading is that they would remain neutral on the dispute, meaning if it is brought to arbitration in an international body, like for example, the agencies under UNCLOS or ITLOS, they'd be neutral there. But with respect to any hostility, I think to me the governing treaty here is the Mutual Defense Treaty. And what does it say? Article 5 is very clear. For purposes of Article 4, an armed attack on either of the parties is deemed to include an armed attack on the metropolitan territory of either of the parties or on the island territories under its jurisdiction in the Pacific Ocean, its armed forces, public vessels or aircraft in the Pacific. In other words, the attack being envisioned here, being contemplated here, is not just an attack on the territory. Pag sinabing metropolitan territory, Manila Bay, Luzon, Visayas, Mindanao. Pag sinabing island territories, I think this refers to Guam. This refers to the islands under the control of the United States in the Pacific Ocean. Guam, it's armed forces. In other words, if there is a Philippine Marines detachment in this practice, and this Philippine Marine detachment is attacked by another power, that is an attack on the armed forces, and that should call for action on the part of the other party to the Mutual Defense Treaty. If a public vessel, Bureau of Fisheries vessels of the Philippines, or a Coast Guard vessel, or a Coast Geodetic Survey vessel, or the worst of course is a Philippine Navy vessel is attacked, or if public aircraft is attacked, that should be considered an attack by the other party, and the other party is obligated to take action. So to me, this is the governing treaty. But of course, the question is, what if the other party will not do anything because of its national interest? Well, that will be the time when we will accuse them of reneging, of being perfidious with respect to their obligations under the Mutual Defense Treaty. So that basically is the situation. There's still a standoff. I don't know how we can disentangle the standoff right now. There is the UNCLOS, there is the Mutual Defense Treaty, there's so many international laws, but there is one law that maybe not even a powerful country can violate, and that is the natural law, the law of nature. Pag dumating na yung typhoon dyan sa area na yan, even an aircraft carrier will have to give way. So, pag inaanan ng typhoon yung lugar na yan, those 34 ships are going to disappear very quickly. And since we are only about 130 nautical miles away, we can quickly go back there. In their case, they're about 800 nautical miles away. It will take them a few more hours, a few more days to get back there. Hopefully the typhoon will stay there very long. So with Warship and not Warship, Maybe we can pray for an early typhoon in the South China Sea area so that they can be removed by natural processes. Thank you very much. Magandang gabi sa inyo. Thank you.